there's about okay, so we are live. Yes, there's
Cool.
about a 5 second lag. And so people will be watching us live, and there's like a little comment feed where people can jump on. So I might kind of look over at that, and people may be wanting to ask you questions. So yes, Deadly Tarantula Girl here on a Saturday night doing a live. I know it's been a couple weekends since I've had a guest, and I'm super excited. This has been, trust me, worth the wait. So this is Kevin Rhodes out of Lubbock, Texas, and he is quite a hognose expert, I would say.
Thank you.
I ordered his book, which is a beautiful hardback version, which is the Morph Guide and Natural History of the Western Hognose. And this book is totally amazing. It's a full color illustration. It shows, let's see if I can show people. There are so many beautiful glossy pages. You can see how many of the pages have full color illustrations. So I really was unaware that there are over 150 morphs of hognose, and the photography is beautiful. I was wondering if you had done it all yourself. So real quick, we're going to say hi to a few people that are here on the stream.
Sure.
So this is Andrew from DEA Exotics, Matthew from New Mexico Royals, Glowsticks the Maine Wolf, Malachi, the Real Rosie Wren, Maple Leaf Rider. A couple people have already jumped on, and they're saying yay Lubbock, and Maple Leaf Rider saying I just got a male and female hognose het sables. New Mexico Royals said they were born in Lubbock. So hello, now that I just did a really long-winded intro, how are you doing?
Great. Glad to be here. What's up? Shout out to all my fans and all the DTG fans out there. Thanks for tuning in and hanging with us.
Yes, you guys are amazing. We love you. So Kevin's actually has a channel too, so we're going to be talking about that some. But let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you got into herps as a little kiddo.
Yeah, so my journey is going to be a lot like a lot of you guys out there. I was into dinosaurs when I was a little kid. So whenever I had my chance to see my first box turtle or lizard in the wild, it just changed everything. And we had pet shops locally that were buying stuff. So we would catch stuff and make ice cream money. And it just got to be a hobby and a business. I started captive breeding at about age 19. And here we are.
Amazing. So yeah, just like a lot of us, it was the dinosaur hook when we were kids. And reptiles truly are the modern embodiment of dinosaurs. It's so amazing. That's one reason why I love retics and monitors so much, because I mean, I was just playing with my Asian water monitor earlier, and gosh, he's so crazy. They're so intelligent, and it's just so amazing the way they move and swim and eat. And to me, it's just a privilege to be able to work with these animals and see them really on a daily basis. Don't even think about it. I have a Chihuahua that's, thinking about getting on the kitchen table because the cat does it. You can't tell the cat no. The dogs, yes. So, okay. So the Real Rosie Wren is, she's really being insistent. Is this a woman? Are you a woman? The Real Rosie Wren? I'm guessing you're a woman. Okay. So they're saying that they have questions for you. Okay. And so, I'm encouraging her to type out her questions. And somebody else is letting us know that they have an African gray, Brachypelma colossi, and 2 snakes. Cool. Okay, so she's saying she's definitely going to type out her questions. Okay, so I'm watching the little comment feed. Oh, goodness. Crazy Chihuahuas. And so type out your questions, and I will read them to him. So so I know you're doing animals full time. What kind of things have you done through the years? And when did you make that transition from having a professional life and a hobby as a herpetologist and then just going full time?
So, yeah, that's been a a curious transition for me, and been a time where I had to do a lot of soul searching, a lot of prayer involved in that, and just trying to figure out where I was at to make that transition, because it's not an easy transition to make. So I started my business, South Plains Reptile, in 2001. That's where I not incorporated, but just started a business with my local city, so that they could know I was serious, filed on my taxes, just started as a business. So that was always an addition to my 9 to 5 job. So at that time I was working in New Mexico, doing a lot of traveling. So I was able to work. And when I got done with the offices that I took care of, in Roswell, I would herp on the highways and roads and places like that. So it was great to kind of do both. But it just got to be the point after 16 years with the Science Museum where I was just ready to make that transition. I'd learned enough about captive breeding and things like that. So the species I've worked primarily with are natives. So ornate box turtle, desert box turtle, eastern collared lizard, barred tiger salamander. I've worked a lot with western diamondbacks. I've worked with all kinds of species and written books on those. So that book right there, the Hognose Morph Guide, was my 8th title to be released.
Wow.
And I've got a 9th title coming out. I've got an expanded version of the Morph Guide that's going to be coming out in April. So
of the Hognose Morph Guide?
Hognose, yeah. And this time if you'll notice, the book is 157 morphs in the book. And then in the last 18 months since that book was released, there's been another at least 10 morphs that have come out, morph combos. So the new book's going to focus on 4 primary sections. The first one's going to be albino and hypo traits. The second one's going to be pattern morphs. The third one's going to be color morphs. That'd be like your reds, your sables, your Swiss chocolates, your Lucy's, things like that. And then the last one's going to be the largest one, and that's going to cover combos. But it's going to give a lot more pictures, and it has to break down, because if we did, a lot of pictures, you'd have an 800 page encyclopedia. So this just breaks down according to traits, and it'll be 4 volumes over this year. And I think it'll be popular for folks that really want to, kind of hone in on some of those traits and inheritances and stuff.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, wow, tell us about some of your other books. And gosh, you seem so young still. This is your 8th book. When did you start writing? And of course, as a teacher, I want to know what your academic background is as well.
Sure. So academically, I have a degree in youth ministry. So I've just always had a heart for younger people. And I've done children's ministry with churches and things like that. And, I believe it's important to be influential. And I know you do as well with your videos. And, you always want to educate as well as you can and reach the younger generation, because they're, what formulates and changes tomorrow's. So right. I've also got I'm in a degree plan right now with natural resources. And that's just kind of held my passion as my wheelhouse. So that's with a local university. And I'm about 2/3 of the way wrapped up with a second degree in that program, just something more science related. In 2010, in 2009, I talked to a book manufacturer about publishing a Hognose book for me. But at that time, he had already kind of gone over and had another guy that was going to be writing a Hognose book. So I decided to self-publish. That was my first title. It sold about 500 copies. And it was just a project in its infancy. So after that time, I just decided to publish more books and kind of pursue those general avenues. My second book was on western diamondbacks. It covered everything primarily concerning commercialization. So rattlesnake roundups. And then, I had a lot of friends that hunted rattlesnakes in the 1950s. So they contributed pictures and stories. So it was just a great compilation. And that was a 5-part series too on commercialized species. So the other commercialized ones were tiger salamanders, the box turtles, the collared lizards, and I'm leaving one out. And for some reason, I can't think of that other 5th book. But anyway, I had those 5 come out. And then I had more recently a hardback book on natural resources. And that was on commercialization of all wildlife in Texas, like talking about when alligators were over harvested in Texas, and they were gone. Mule deer and white-tailed deer, biologists couldn't find them in Texas in the early 1900s because they'd been overhunted. So it covers all species. It covers diamondback terrapins. That was another one that was hard hit in the U.S. They were putting them in, restaurant menu dishes, and everybody liked to eat diamondback terrapins, and it almost extirpated the entire species along the East Coast and Gulf of Mexico. So that was one of my other books, and it's been fun publishing, and I just have enjoyed that as an out, being a writer. And I haven't made a ton of money with it, but it's just something that's really fun. So that's just one of my gigs.
That's really incredible. So I was just curious, could you tell us a little bit about the process of self-publishing?
So self-publishing is difficult. If you want to go with a publisher, generally you start with a publisher and pay anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 to publish your book. But that's mostly for that publisher to promote your book in avenues like Barnes and Noble. Now it's Amazon, it's other places. But if you can self-publish and self-promote, you can do quite well with it. But it's all on you. It's on your shoulder. It's your responsibility. But with social media and other avenues like that, you can totally, create your information. And if you have a little bit of skill in software or know somebody that does, there's a little bit of a learning curve with it. But I think it's a good option because people still everybody loves ebooks because of the convenience. But herpers, we want something we can hold on to. I want something I can read while I'm on the toilet, and we do. Look at if you ever go to people's bathrooms, you see all the books that are there. And every herper, that's the same thing. They just have all their book collections at the toilet. So we all want to have a collection. We collect books, Yeah, look behind you, books. You look behind me, books, And I love to collect books, but I love herp books more. But everybody seems to. You can't have enough books, herp books especially.
Yeah, I totally agree. I collect a few genres of books, but for the most part, I collect informational texts. Most of our library is, reference type books regarding, natural history or the breeding or reproduction of all kinds of, we keep such a diverse collection. So I am curious.
Sure.
You said that these guys who, people, I should say, not all of them are men, I would presume, who were doing the rattlesnake roundups and all those things in the 50s. So who do you consider some of your mentors to be?
Oh, mentors, like in the herp hobby, I guess, primarily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of the local guys I think were some of my mentors. I'll throw out a few names that people may recognize, old-timey, old-school herpers that some don't even own a computer, but they taught me more than I could ever learn, by myself. But some of those names are Donnie Rollins, he's local, Donnie Phillips, Archie Bottoms, obviously Ryan Blakely, Michael Price, who else from here local? Chris Pipes, I think, is still around. Kyle Howard. Who else do I know? Richard Evans, if I didn't say it already. So lots of the local guys. That's because I had access to them. And before the internet was around, the internet didn't around till, pretty close to the late 90s. So you just had to meet people at a pet shop or be out in the field. I've run into people out in the field and started, friendships with them, or, like meeting JD, at a pet shop,
way back when.
Yeah, it's all organic connection. And now it's digital and it's the same thing, but yeah, those are my mentors. They kind of got me started herping and understanding field collections. And that's just, I love being in the field. If I could be anywhere all the time, would be in the field. It's fascinating.
Oh, I totally agree. Those are definitely some of my favorite videos to film, but I love hunting Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, even some into Colorado. And it's just, there's nothing, I don't want to say there's nothing. There are a few things more beautiful than just having your boots on and going out and hiking in the desert and just seeing what you can find. And it's so, people think that the desert's kind of desolate and lifeless, and it is not. It is beautiful.
Yep, that is right.
Wow, incredible. So, obviously you've been out in the field. Tell us a couple of interesting stories. So a lot of people that are in the hobby at this point have always purchased their animals from stores and have never done field work. And so tell us some of your stories about being out in the field, some of your favorite memories.
Well, one of my favorite times, and it was kind of scary, and it was just a wild situation, but we went to the Davis Mountains to collect. And it was a great time collecting. I went with a friend, and we used to use canisters that were ventilated at the top. And what we would do is put a harbinger clip on it and clip those to your waist. And that way you could have 6 of those and still have both hands to be able to catch other snakes. And I don't keep venomous anymore personally, any hots anymore. But at the time, working for the museum, we had a live collection. And so we were in need of species. And the area we went into, it was right after the big fires that went through the Davis Mountains. So we caught a blacktail, and all his scales along his sides were singed from the fires.
Oh, wow.
And we caught a rock rattler that was the same way. Well, anyway, the rock rattler was in the tub behind my seat, and we were out all night long, and we went to take a nap at the Madera Canyon Trail, the little parking lot.
Yeah.
It's the, the peak area, and it's really cool during the day and a lot of shade. So as I leaned back my seat, it squashes that canister. And I reach behind the seat to grab a pillow. And when I did, I heard the little buzz of the lepidus.
Oh.
And I looked at my friend Eric, and I was like, hey, dude, that didn't sound like it was in the canister, did it? And he just about flew out of his seat. He was in the passenger seat.
Oh,
and,
my God.
Yeah. So we looked back there, and obviously the top had, the threads had popped because of the, pressure on the container. And this thing gets out, and we can't find it. And so we're trying to disassemble the truck to find it. Well, we have to go back down to Fort Davis to the little hardware store to find a star key tool so that we can take the seats out and figure out if he's gone in between the cushions or where it is.
Oh my gosh.
So this is one of your leps that are gorgeous anyway, and it was something we needed for the collection. It was, the purple granite colors. They're just gorgeous, but we couldn't find where this dude went. So we went to town, took the seats out, peeled the carpet out, couldn't find this freaking thing, and just couldn't figure out anything. But while we were there, we looked up on our phones, and evidently, I didn't realize this, but every truck cab has cab vents under the back seat. And that's so when you got the air conditioner blowing, that air is not circulating, it's pushing out so that it's bringing fresh air in. Yeah. So he had gone out the cab vents, and I was like, well, that sucks because we'll never see him again. So we drove back up to Madera, took naps, and then after that night, a storm blew in and snakes were moving like crazy. I mean, it just seems like every series of cuts, there was something moving. So we pulled off at one set of cuts, and I told my buddy, I was like, hey, man, I got to go use the bathroom. So I ran to the truck. Everything with humor is going to be bathroom humor. I apologize. So I go to the truck, grab the roll of toilet paper, and when I closed my driver's side door, I heard the rattle outside. And I was like, wait a second. And I got my flashlight out because it was just starting to turn dark. And that rock rattler was sitting on the wheel well of my driver's side rear wheel. And we traced it back. It was the same snake. So he had gone out of the cab vents. He had ridden on the frame of the truck all the way to Fort Davis, which was 20-something miles.
Oh, my gosh.
All the way back up. And then when we parked at the cut to shine, he decided, okay, it's quiet. I guess I'll move. And he went down the frame, went across the top of the axle, and was sitting right on top of but I got some pictures of that in my rattlesnake book. And it was just one of those stories that was, couldn't have been cooler. I mean, it was just so beautiful that we were still able to have that guy. He didn't get killed. We were able to keep him in our collection for years and years. It was just really, really cool. But that was one of my favorite stories about herping.
That is wild. So first of all, that neither you guys or the animal were hurt, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But holy smokes, what a ride for that little guy.
Yeah, it was just crazy.
Wow. That's amazing. That's fate that you still went home with that animal.
Yeah, it was just really wild. But yeah, overall a good trip. We saw quite a bit of stuff. It was unfortunate to see stuff that was actually injured by the fires. It just shows how devastating a fire can be to an ecosystem,
Oh, yeah. So, what year did you decide to just go working with animals full time? And what's your main, what all areas are you like doing? Any guiding, or is it mainly captive reproduction and selling? What areas are you working in?
The switch to transition to full-time reptile business happened very recently. That was actually around the 15th of November. So
wow.
It's been a very recent move. But I guess you're kind of asking what areas I'm going to, what my interests are, and what I'm kind of promoting.
Right.
So I'm doing captive bred hognose. I recently got into bull snake morphs. I've seen morphs in the wild. I've seen albinos. We've had about 4 different albino bull snakes that have come from the area here. So a bunch of really cool stuff, but I've never been into them. But just recently, I mean, you pick up a 7-foot Pituophis, and they're remarkable animals. Testy, heavy, they're just a beast. It's the closest
they have
thing
a lot of personality.
Yeah. I mean, like indigos, I love holding big indigos. But, with Texas indigos being a T&E species, I just work with the pits. So I work with those guys, the Pituophis. I work with collared lizard, like locality-specific and color-specific eastern collared lizards. I work with high-colored barred tiger salamanders and actually raise those outdoors in altered ponds. And I work with amphibian species like the western green toad, the Anaxartes debilis. Work with those guys and do rain chambers and captive breeding with those. And trying to think of some of the other species. Box turtles, I still work with a little bit. I've worked with box turtles for since 15, I started working with those on a captive breeding scale. So I was working with trying to create enough of those and enough of an interest. And that's when we were kind of shifting from the wild caught to the captive bred. But it takes so long for those guys to get of size. And I've still got babies. They're just at 4 inches, and they were born in 2015. So that just kind of goes to show they're not as fast growing. Like a 3-toed, you can get to almost adult size in 3 years. But the ornata luteola are just a lot harder to go.
So how long does it take? About how old? So is it more age, size? How does that work for them?
So for the box turtles, and I have not got them to size to see how they reproduce in captivity yet. So this group I've got is the first group that I'll get to size. But at least for the other species, the collared lizards, the tiger salamanders, the hognose, the bull snakes, it's size and not age. So if they're a certain size, I mean, we've had Western hognose or plains hognose at 5 months that have successfully sired clutches, which will blow your mind. Now, that's not all of them. You can't look into it and say that every hognose is going to breed at 5 months of age at, 35 grams. But it does happen. Collared lizards. We've had collared lizards that hatch out in July, and by November, they're already developing orange bars and breeding the males. So that happens in the wild too. You see certain ones that get big enough and they're able to do it. So it's more of a size deal than it is an age deal. Now, age and maturity comes into play when you have, how does this mother, have the tendency to nest? It may be better to let them age and get some size and age too, but size generally determines sexual maturity.
Okay, interesting. So, for those who are unfamiliar, tell people a little bit about the green toad, because they're such an interesting species.
So yeah, the green toad, originally they were under the Bufonidae, so they were called Bufo. And so recently taxonomic changes have come up, and they're under Anaxarus. They decided that Bufo would be all ones from the Old World, and the New World, which is North and South America, was going to be Anaxarus. So they're a small, flatter species of toad. They tend to hang out in areas that are really dry, and they love rocky crevasses that they live in. And it's believed that, similar to the round-tailed horned lizard, that they like to eat a diet primarily on ants. So they love to eat cave crickets. They love to eat honeypot ants. They love to eat other species that are crepuscular, just meaning, active at dusk, and live in little crevices. So I think they're really cool. You got your females that are 1 3/4 long, and you've got your males that are about 1 inch long. They're dimorphic, meaning from the top, they look just the same. They're green with a little black dot on each bump, but the males have a jet black throat. And so when they're using that to call, in their amplexus, if you don't know what the term amplexus means, that's just the congregational chorus that they use to draw the females to the breeding pools. But the males expand those their little throats, and it's black around the edge, and it's just a really cool looking species. I love their call. I love it that they're communal. You can find one teeny little tiny hole and find 500 or 1,000 that live in there. Some of the scientific studies have been done. So they are communal. They have to do that to survive, but we don't see them a lot in the hobby. They're very rare in the hobby. So what I'm hoping that the breeders can do now is to create a captive population of them, because they're just so colorful, being a southwestern animal.
Yeah, they are. And they have a very unique call. And they can remain dormant for several years sometimes, can they not?
That's correct. Yeah, they can. Most of the southwestern toads, and even your Scaphiophus or your Spea, your spadefoot toads, they have relatives in Australia, and they're the ones that have the mucose.
They that shell casing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so they're just used to, maybe having sufficient rainfall every 3 years, 4 years, decade. So I think these guys are adept, or they just wouldn't survive, because New Mexico and Texas is really harsh weather. We have days. We had a day this week where it was a 50-degree change in weather in 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So those animals, are used to there being, climate change, if you will, that affects them. So they're adept to it. And that's another thing that just blows my mind on them as a species.
Yeah, they're really neat. So I just love when we get the monsoons, and we do get those kind of just ponds that do accumulate. The green toads will come out, and their cry is so unique. And, like you said, there's a chorus of frogs, and their cry almost sounds like a baby cry or something. It's so strange. And they usually come out at night, and they'll spawn for a few days, and then those ponds dry up, and you don't see them again for a few years. It's really, really interesting.
It is. It's really cool.
So are you one of the guys working on breeding those in captivity?
Yeah, I'm one of the ones that's working on that, and there's a lot of guys that are doing that and making that shift. And I like that a lot of the community is looking to species that nobody's working with. And of course, me being a native guy, native reptiles and amphibians guy, anything that's native just really captures my heart. I love my state. I love the Southwest. I love the desert. So I just really relate to people that love our native species that we have locally here, and really want to work with those, because I think everybody could benefit by having green toads as pets. I think it's just the coolest thing. Everybody needs at least a pair of them.
Oh, I totally agree. So put me on your list.
Okay, you got it.
So I'm curious. So in keeping them in captivity, are you simulating that dry period? What type of substrate are you keeping? I'm super serious about super curious. Well, I'm seriously curious about how closely you're trying to mimic a natural environment, or are you just meeting their needs? Do you think that they'll spawn if they haven't gone through that dry period? Tell me all about it.
Yeah, so a lot of it's conjecture or personal opinion, but I really believe that especially with the green toad, they're used to a famine or feast. There's times where they're active. There's times when they're feeding, and it's like anything else. The collared lizards, the box turtles, other species like the hognose snake, for instance. In the latter part of the fall, when all the July rains have caused this mass population burst of amphibians, hognose gorge themselves, and I know that these green toads do that too. They're spending lots and lots of time just consuming. So what I like to do with a lot of my species is famine or feast. Not to say that I starve them,
Right,
but they're used to going for periods of time without nutrient reserve. But that means that when it is on, that nutrient building or protein building, they're gorging themselves and they create those. It's just like the veiled chameleons. When they first came into the hobby, they were, an African species, not eating very much. And then all of a sudden they get crickets every day. And it even got to the point that a lot of keepers were having egg binding because they had 30 eggs, that they couldn't pass. As a species, they weren't used to having that surplus of protein and food. So it created a different complication. But I think animals in general, especially those from areas that are desert, when they do, they know that this is the opportunity. Those are the years we breed. Those are the years we have offspring. And so that's what I like to simulate with mine. So other options I'll do a rain chamber, but I'll connect those rain chambers with a hide box. And in that hide box, it's a little drier than normal. And periodically I'll spray those down so that they've got sufficient moisture, and just do feedings maybe once a month or something like that, just so they are consuming a lot of protein at one time. And then especially right before the breeding season, I'll turn on the rain chamber, open the channels or tunnels that lead to the rain chamber, and they'll come out and chorus. And so I've gotten some eggs, but have not gotten eggs to successfully make it. So I'm still tweaking like water levels, water temperature, maybe parameters of the water, because I think there's a lot to it that we just are still learning as we kind of pioneer this whole captive breeding of some of these harder species.
So are you documenting all this as you go, or is this going to be a book about the green toads?
Yeah, that's generally something that I've done. Like with a lot of the books, like I worked with the tiger salamanders for a long time and kind of have honed in on getting them figured out. Everything from cannibalism to preferred foods to growth rates to, since you've got an aquatic form and a terrestrial form, just looking at which one fares better, how long they live. Those were science projects I had going on at the museum that I was able to pursue. And I didn't have funding from the museum, but they allowed me the time to pursue that as much as I wanted. So all of that information went into the tiger salamander book, which I think is just a great resource for us as herpetologists to have that. Those were 5-year and 10-year studies. I hope to replicate the same thing with some of these other species like the green toad.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple more people here on the feed that are kind of chatting it up. Let's see. So we had, we have a Filipino viewer, Lars. Ramiro joined. The Backwoods Serpentarium TV came on. Michigan Exotics is asking if you're the Kevin Rhodes from Fauna.
From Fauna. I'm not sure which one they're referring to.
Fauna Classifieds, probably.
I'm not sure. I've sold on there before.
So there's your answer. Maybe.
Okay.
Let's see. Peyton's come on, and they're just saying, that they can't wait to see what you're gonna do. And one person saying, "I've got a secret plan for a new morph of Hognose. We are twins. Haha."
Cool.
So people are enjoying. Yes. So the Backwoods Serpentarium is saying yes. Fauna Classified. So maybe he's the Kevin Rhodes from there. I don't know how many Kevin Rhodes are in the hobby. I mean, I guess that's kind of a common name, sort of. Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably you. So let's talk hoggies.
Okay, let's talk Hognose.
Yeah. So 3 questions.
Okay.
What's your favorite morph?
Oh man, that's a hard one. So many nice ones out there. I think that one of my all-time favorites, just based on the color, because I'm a dark morphs guy. You could throw albinos and all these reds and oranges, and I love them all, but dark morphs have always held my fancy. So I think the Super Arctic is probably my all-time favorite. Black and white hognose, sometimes black eyes. Beautiful.
Who do you consider to be the hognose king?
See, there's a lot of competition there. It's a smaller hobby, but there's, probably close to 40,000 hognose keepers worldwide, just the hognose. And that's just a personal belief. There's about 20,000 different hognose members in the Facebook forums. And then people that are not involved online and in other countries. I think it's very safe to say that 40 to 50,000 hognose keepers wouldn't be out of the ballpark. But it's just hard to say. Everybody's got their own angle. Everybody's got their own interest, and it's competitive. There's guys that are fighting hard and slinging mud right now to try to, to reach that position. But it's a challenge, just like anything else. You get into that position, and you're hated by everybody, you're challenged by everybody, and it's no fun. So I've ridden or tried to ride close to that before, but the heat is hot in the kitchen, and so I try to at least fly below the radar in that sense. It's just it's brutal out there.
It is. And then, so what would you consider to be the most exciting / lucrative up and coming morph or project? And I think you even did some kind of paper.
Let's see. I'm trying to think up and coming right now. There's so many. And the cool thing about the hognose right now is to hone it into one morph. I don't know if I could do, but there's so many.
So tell us about some of the most exciting things that you predict to be on the forefront.
So I think you guys are going to want to look at your sable combos. You're going to look at your Super Arctic combos. And then there's other stuff. There's a couple more projects, and some of them I'm not allowed to expound on because they haven't been released yet. But I do know that,
when we're off.
Yeah, there are some that some breeders are working on that are new forms of hypos. I can say that at least. And there's one I've seen that is kind of a red with black eyes, but it's got hypo belly. It was buried under wraps and in a few small collections for the last 10 years, but it's recently kind of it's about to go full term, or it's about to be released into the hobby, which is very exciting. So if you want to dig around a little bit, get on kingsnake.com forums or get on the kingsnake.com gallery and start looking into pictures, and you could probably see that animal or some that were posted a decade ago. Something cool. I think it's beneficial for the hobby. Other ones you're going to want to follow. There's some obscure morphs in hognose. There's one called True Hypo. True Hypo is not a lot of people have. And there's a guy in New England, and he's a tarantula guy. You've probably heard of him, 8 legs plus. He formed or founded the true hypomorph, and that was actually there was a guy in Lubbock, Texas named Joe Bill Rogers that had the first one and wholesaled that out. And so I think Tom ended up picking that animal up or picking up maybe offspring, and he's done a lot of work and come up with some really cool stuff. But he's not paying me for this plug. But Tom at 8 Legs Plus, he's not online. You'll have to see him at the Hamburg show or somewhere like that. But True Hypo is the name of that one. And it is just a really sharp, clean, good-looking snake. I've got a green one that is will just blow you away. She's got purple where it should be black, even dorsally. And then on the belly, it's just very reduced black. And so almost a sheen to it. But I think True Hypo is just something that's very, very underrated. There's a new red that's coming out this year. You guys may have seen some stuff on called Raging Red. And I picked up an animal 18 months ago, and he just bred for me the other day. Raging Red is really, really got a wide spectrum, but a lot of the animals have an orange background with purple saddles. And so they blow away most of the, quote, red and purples you see today. There's a lot of stuff in Hognose that says red and purple, and it's brown, okay? And you can say purple line, and I will say, okay, I'll get that.
Right.
But these things are mind-blowing. You know, my animal has black saddles, and he's got pink and white as a background color. Just phenomenal. So Raging Reds, keep an eye out for those. They're expensive, they're pricey, but it's something that this breeder, and he flies below the radar too out in North Carolina, but just watch King Snake Classifieds, because I've seen some advertisements there. I've seen some on Fauna. I've seen some in some other places. So Raging Reds are hot. I would say definitely jump into that. Pistachios are out there. They're really stinking cool. Other morphs that you don't see a lot of, Smoke Hypo, that's another one of those obscures, similar to True Hypo. I don't know that they're compatible or not, but Smoke Hypo is something really, really cool to see. Some of the other ones that have come up, if you know Louis Chavez, anybody ever heard of him? He's in Fort Worth. Great dude. He's really honed in on the mocha morph and come up with some really, really sharp mochas. There's some guys out there promoting mochas that look like normals, nothing to it. But Louis really got some nice mochas. So, yeah, those are some of the guys and some of the morphs in the hobby that I would say to look out for that are just stellar. Also, check out Dan Eby. If you know Dan, he's over in Montana. He formed the sable. Those were from a wild animal. He hatched out 2 sables. And sables do good with combos. They look like a black animal, but what you're really seeing is a concentration of reds that make it appear black. So when you cross them into albinos and other morphs, you really see the oranges that get to come out of the reds. So I would say check out some of that stuff. You can see some great pictures anywhere online.
So Maple Leaf Rider is asking what you know about he said the yellow dragon or the sun dragon or some type of morph that people are seeming to have an issue raising to maturity.
Sun dragon. So Hognose morph?
I presumed. So Maple Leaf Rider, if you know something about anything more about that you can kind of give us a clue. Type that so we kind of have an idea.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that term in the hobby for a hognose morph, but it may have, there's a lot of AKAs. There's a lot of guys that can pick up projects and rename them. There's a whole bunch of that going on. And some of them need to be because those projects would be lost without it. But there's a lot of, there's a lot of guys that pick up projects and rename them, according to their own name. And somebody down the street has the exact same thing. So that's just part of reptile culture. I mean, we've seen it with ball pythons for years. So, yeah.
Okay, so Maple Leaf Rider is saying they're not really sure anymore about it. They think it's behind the scenes in Canada. So that'll be interesting to see if something about the sun dragon pops up here in the future. So I'll be listening for that.
Yeah, check with them and see if they can give us any other, how it looks. I know that the Lemon Ghost was created by JMG Reptiles. So he created the
Mm-hmm.
Lemon Ghost, and out of that project came the WOMA, WOMA, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
similar to Spider, and it's similar to the Granite Jungles that I developed and created. And I know there several have gone out that have been from those lines, but they thought they were different because they were hidden for several generations. Like there was one for a while called Bengal, and Bengals had really bright yellows and really crazy patterns, but it was discovered later that they came from JMG's animals. And then there was another
Okay.
line that they called Honey Hypo, and Honey Hypo was the same thing. Beautiful animals, but they were just derivatives of the Lemon Ghost, which is more of a polygenic / dominant trait.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So tell me what you know about Leucistic Hognose.
So Leucistic kind of flew off the map for a while. So you guys are familiar with the story, and a lot of, people are familiar with the bad luck that kind of fell along with that project, and then thankfully it's back in the hobby. So
Yes.
that was an opportunity that was seized upon by somebody that was a herper and somebody that was into captive breeding, and they saw it as a golden opportunity to get back into the project. And to this day, you can go see Leucistic Hognose at a lot of the shows. So a lot of people consider the Leucistic Hognose to be a dead-end morph, yet you can still work with them and see eye color. And we don't know that there's some ambiguity with it. There's kind of a nebulous cloud around it. It's kind of like people said, if you cross the piebald and the spider ball python, nothing strange or crazy would happen. But you remember what happened. I mean, it was just mind-blowing. You got an animal with, a normal patterned head or, normal colored head and a solid white body. So yeah. I'm not saying it's proven because it hasn't been yet. But we don't know, because the Leucistic has only been bred for the last 8 or 9 years in captivity with other morphs. So we don't know what kind of morphs may have an influence on it. So I still remain hopeful on the Lucies. I don't have any in my collection, but I do think that they're sharp animals, and they're, prices are dropping down. I've heard of them recently being $5,000 to $7,000, for females and a little more for males. So once they become more affordable, everybody's going to just have to have one in their collection. When they hit $1,500, I'll probably have a few. Fun.
So tell us what you consider your basic husbandry for keeping and breeding hognose.
So basic husbandry, and I'm going to blow or pop a bubble here because there's lots of different methods that work. Ooh. So I can tell you my method.
Yeah, I'm asking about yours.
Oh, mine specifically. Okay, so my specific method, what I like to do bedding-wise, I like to put them on Zany chips. That, for me, Zany chips are messy. They get through vent holes. If you pick up an animal or if you go to spot clean, that Zany chips get everywhere, but I still love that they're super absorbent. They don't, if the snake ever comes in with mites, you don't have to go through all the, aspen shredded. I hate shredded aspen, for that. Plus, if they ingest Zany chips, even as a small baby, they can pass it. A lot of times I've had snakes that have swallowed some, aspen shredded, like spikes, and it's killed them. So not common, but I just don't like to go with it. Now, newspapers, a lot of folks use too, and I like that newspapers are flat, but I just don't use newspapers because they're messy. They crap on it. It's everywhere. It just doesn't absorb like Zany chips. So I'm a Zany chips guy. Now, as far as a rack system, once a snake gets to be probably 40 grams for a male, or maybe that size for a female too, I'll go ahead and put them in 32-quart racks. Now, I build my own racks. It's just cheaper that way. Probably be doing some vids sometime soon on how to build a rack on a budget. You can build an 18-unit rack with tubs, brand new tubs, and a little bit of skill and expertise, for somewhere around $150. So it's not expensive to do, and so I just like to do my own stuff. And then sometimes I just get bored with it, or I'm at a show and there's a nice hatchling rack and I just decide to go with it. So I'm wishy-washy that way. I'll build a pencil rack. I've done shoebox racks. I can build a shoebox rack with 15 units in it for like $30. So, and that's
what materials, may I ask?
Well, you get your shoe racks at garage sales. So if I'm at a garage sale and see those little, cube shoe racks that are made out of wood, and then I just modify them a little bit by adding, usually the tubs you can buy are a little shorter than that. So I'll put a little bit of wood at the bottom for them to slide on. And then I just get like casserole dishes, that are disposable. And they work great. You ventilate them, you put a hole in them. And so in about 2 hours, I can create as many racks as I've got opportunity for. Now, you can even buy them brand new for like $16-18 and do that yourself. Just go that route. But I like finding them at garage sales, estate sales, places like that, and just a little bit of handyman work. But anybody can do that. Some of you guys and gals out there just like to get a drill and some screws and go at it. And so if you've got that in your repertoire, it makes sense, especially if you're doing it on a budget, because sometimes racks can be pricey. I know that, but I like to do, as far as heat goes, I like ambient only. Some folks like heat tape, belly heat, back heat, things like that. And I've done all those. But for me, keeping ambient temperature in a room at 83 degrees has been the most successful I've been for keeping and breeding hognose. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just remarking that's very interesting, because people are asking like heat tape mats in the comment feed, and I was going to ask like, well, how do you heat that? But so ambient temperature 82 degrees year round, or do you cool it?
About 83 degrees. And so the way I have two separate shops for hogs, because when that ambient temperature is going and the adults are ready to be cooled, they can be put into a temp controlled place. And for a situation like that, you can do them in all kinds of places. You can do them in a cold closet for brumation. You can do them in a shed or shop. You can do them in a garage. There's a lot of different options. You can do them on the floor because it's generally cooler on the floor than ambient. So to set up for brumation, I'll take a space heater and turn it on to 60 degrees and just leave it at that. And generally the temperature is always going to be lower than that 60 by maybe 5 degrees, 8 degrees. But that 55 degree area is really, really good for hibernation. Now you can go all the way down to freezing. I've had friends that have done it where they've had ice in their water bowls. It was that cold, and the hogs do fine. But I like to hit the brumation around 55 to 60 degrees. You really don't want to get it warmer than 60, but even in the wild with warm temperatures in March, the ground temperatures, we've done studies where we've gone 10 feet underground and taken temperature studies. And even if the ground temperature only alters by a degree or two, the snakes know it. And we find that snakes, communal species like hognose, which everybody thinks are solitary, but in the wild, hognose are actually more communal than you would think. But other species like atrox, or viridis or species like that, on a warm day, they come to get what they can. That's in brumation. Right. So if there's a little bit of a warmer day, 5 degree difference, it's not going to kill your snake. It's not going to hurt it. It's not going to make it sick. So if you've got a, brumate in a certain area, that always works. Lighting, I typically do. You can either get your lights to kind of condition towards what they would have naturally. That's one option that I've done in the past, but it was a pain in the butt because I had to keep changing the timers. But if you've got a digital system and you're able to do that, do it. Because snakes have that as a trigger for breeding season. Breeding season, you've got two triggers. It's all environmental. It's heat and it's light, okay? So you pull them out of hibernation, guess what? The temperature is 20 degrees warmer now. They know it's time to start cycling. So that's a breeding tip. That's a free tip for you guys wondering about breeding. I've had a lot of people asking me lately, how do I get these hognose to breed? It's all light dependent and it's temperature dependent. Now, what I do is just a 16-hour day. And my guys know that the lights come on, at 7 in the morning, and then they go off at 11 in the evening. And that's just consistent. So hognose and other species, you guys know with your zoo, but for anybody watching, reptiles, they respond very well to situations or conditioning that's consistent. Okay. If it's too crazy, a lot of times it'll interrupt your breeding cycles. It's going to interrupt feeding. It's all kinds of stuff that's problematic. So the more consistent you can be fine. And here's another thing with hibernation or brumation. You've heard it said, they don't have to brumate. Hognose don't have to do it, and that's probably because the Western or Plains variety in the southern part of the distribution, they don't have to hibernate. It doesn't get really cold enough. South Texas, you've got the Kennerly eye down there. They can be active all year long. There's a lot of places where platyrhinos are active all year long. Not as active as in the warmer times, but they've still got a better activity season than species, above the Mason-Dixon line, for example. Right. Let me think anything else. Feeding, I do frozen thawed only on those.
Mice?
On mice, yeah, I'll do mice only. I do scenting when I need to. So even captive animals that are 5th, 6th, 7th generation, some of them when they're getting going or when they go through a little spell where they're not wanting to eat, I need consistency. I need them to feed on a regular basis. So for me, I use, my product I've been promoting lately, the Magic Toad scent. So I just want to make sure that when I go in there to feed everybody's going to get a meal. I don't have a snake that skips 6 weeks eating or 3 months eating. And I've had them do that in the past. I would rather just scent it, have it going. It keeps its metabolism up. It's growing like its siblings are, and we move on. And a lot of folks are worried about that, but you don't have a lot of snakes that, get hooked on that like crack, and they don't want to go back to anything else.
I need to know about the Magic Toad scent. What are you talking about?
Well, Magic Toad scent is a product that I developed, and so it's a proprietary blend of toad flavors. And it's
okay.
So it's a byproduct, so it has no parts, so I can ship that worldwide. I got clearance from U.S. Fish and Wildlife that it can go anywhere in the world because it doesn't have any toad parts in it, but it has toad flavor, and it's from toads that are right here in the native range. So, a lot of people say, well, I want to go get, like one guy from Florida, he said, I just went and got a baby Bufo marinus, to feed to my hognose, and it died. The hognose died. So you can't just, tweak it how you want. I think it's you want to feed them stuff that they're used to feeding on instinctively. So anyway, I've got this product that I've been promoting over the last probably 6 months and sold worldwide. And it's just been something that's, it's not to be a replacement, but it's to keep your snake's metabolism up, so it's not losing a ton of weight during brumation. But it's been really popular. We've sold, lots and lots of units. And the problem is with that, not trying to go on a rabbit trail, but a lot of breeders, they keep their best feeders for themselves personally. And every problem feeder goes to the wholesaler. And guess what? It ends up in a pet shop where little Kimmy or little Johnny buys it, and it doesn't feed well. It's never been conditioned. So this product just helps those kids or those parents condition that snake so that it's not dead, because thousands of snakes die and have for years without something like this. They just don't have access to a toad to rub on or something like that. So that's that Magic Toad product.
I need to get some of that stuff. So how do people get that from you? Do you have a website? And we need to talk about your channel too.
So the website is hognose1.com. That's HOGNOSE, the number 1.com. And so it's got ordering instructions, gives you a little bit of basis on that. The channel RRNRTX is reptiles, rattlesnakes, and natural resources. And kind of going back to a previous question you'd asked earlier, I do captive breeding, book sales, sales of the flavor products that I offer. I also do rattlesnake removals for people, snake removals, things like this. So if somebody's doing a construction project on a dam, and they don't want to have all the animals that are dug up, just go to waste or something happens, I'll relocate those, to a suitable ranch. I've got a lot of ranches that I work with. Some of them don't want rattlesnakes, and so those are either donated to those people that are interested, zoos, places like that, or they're relocated. So that's just a different element of my business. So you guys check out the channel when you have a chance and you can see a lot of the different things that we've been engaged with and that we do. And the channel's new too. Actually, for you guys viewing on there, JD and Deadly Tarantula Girl have been kind of walking me through doing YouTube videos. So they felt like there was enough information that people needed to see and hear.
Definitely
encouraging me when I've been ready to say, no, you know what, I don't need to do this anymore. And it's been good. It's been a good move for us. So thanks to you guys for that.
Thank you. Well, his videos far surpass mine as far as his videos are very elegant and beautiful. He spends, each one is a work of art. He spends so much time in editing and production. We just kind of like pop them out as quick as we can because we've always got more stuff to film. But this guy right here, you need to check his channel out. It is beautiful. So how many videos have you put out so far? I know you just got started.
I think of the videos so far, there might be 15 or 16. And we've kind of been on a Hognose bandwagon just because that's a lot of what, my customer base that I've developed over the last, I've been in business doing Hognose since 2001. So a lot of that base is switching over to digital and YouTube and things. So there's just been a lot of requests on Hognose stuff because you think there's a lot out there and there's not. There's some good stuff. Snake Discovery, she does some good stuff, and there's a few others. But there's a lot of others with Hognose that are throwing some stuff out that I would not I wouldn't say is good information. So
I agree with you completely. So here's an interesting question for you.
Sure.
Would you consider a Hognose a good starter snake in your personal opinion?
Yes and no. And that's not what you wanted to hear. But
no, I agree.
It's relative. It's if there's an animal that a good breeder has got and it's conditioned to feeding, that coupled with the fact that they're a good educator, that opportunity for a new Hognose owner is golden.
Okay.
What you get is you get good breeders that are, they can crank them out, right? But their education is lacking or they don't communicate with their buyer.
Right.
And that's a problem, right? And then you got other ones. Go ahead.
They unload their, or as you mentioned earlier, they're looking to unload their non-feeders. They don't educate the people. Yes, there's lots of those people.
But I think it was the Hognose snake was one of my first pets. I remember the day that I saw the first one in a pet store, and the guy, and it wasn't just one, the guy had about 20 Western Hognose piled on each other in a 10-gallon aquarium. And I was just like, oh, those are the coolest snakes ever. I'd never seen anything like it. I'd only seen checkered garters, king snakes. That was when there was a huge interest in tricolors, and Lampropeltis was everything in the 90s. That was when everybody loved white tigers and Lamborghini Countach and the circus guys with blonde hair. So but the Hognose was kind of drab and it was interesting, but it wasn't very much longer that same pet shop, somebody found a pastel pink albino in the wild, an adult, and and if you guys want to see a picture of that very first albino pink pastel Hognose, that animal, I've got a picture of that very founder animal, what started the whole hobby. that'll be in my next book. I've also got a founder pick of the first orange albino that was found in New Mexico, not far from you guys.
Wow.
As an adult, imagine being a 15-year-old kid cruising up to the next town to pick up your girlfriend and go grab a drink at Sonic, and you find an albino hognose laying in the middle of a dirt road. And that's what this kid did.
That'd be like the lottery.
Yeah, I mean, just blow your mind. And just really cool stuff like that. So
yeah, I've got Jiminy Cricket over here. He wants to know when your next book is coming out.
So the next book should be coming out. It was supposed to go to the printer last week, but there were some things that were held up with production. So the proof is going to be sent out on Monday. And that book, if everything goes well with the proof, that first book is going to come out in April. So you guys are going to want to see that. That book is called Albino and Hypo Traits. So it covers 10 hognose snake recessive albino and hypo traits. There's one that has not been released yet. So it was not in the hognose morph book. That's another guy in another country that we're working with, and it's a brand new, really hot morph that is completely, for me, mind-blowing. It looks like a mix of about 5 different morphs, but he's bred it for 4 years now to prove it out and proven it to be recessive. And I think that animal, once it's in the hobby, will be just a tremendous animal to mix into just about any other hognose morph you can get. But it looks like about 5 different pattern and color traits combined. So it's just pretty cool. But that's... I'm sorry?
To be reproducible, or was it a fluke?
No, he thought maybe it was a fluke. And in 2014, he produced the first one, and he's continued to reproduce those. And I think he's down to the F3 generation now, but it was proven this year to be a recessive trait. And all of them look the same. So it's just phenomenal. But that one is one of my debuts that's going to be coming out in that new book. And so you guys are going to want to look at that. And we may just have to do some kind of collaboration with your channel if you're interested in your viewers and ours. And maybe do some giveaways of that new book before they hit the shelves. That might be something fun to, if you guys want. We can talk more about that later. But that's going to be the new book and when it's coming out and what's going on there with that.
Sounds incredible. Let's see. So, gosh, I don't even know where to go from here. You've done so much. It's really amazing. You guys definitely, of course, we're going to link all of his books down below and his channel and the website. What do you think I should ask before we wrap?
When are we going to get this book autographed?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I want to know when we get to meet and hang out, everything's back. Autograph my book for me.
You say when, and when
Mr.
we
Rhodes?
meet up, I'll definitely autograph your book. And for any of the viewers,
Awesome.
you guys are watching, bring your books to the shows. We're going to be doing quite a few shows locally and regionally, and then some in the extended places this year. So be happy to sign books if you want to bring them. Also, guys, in about 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing a promo on my YouTube video with a coupon code for that book. It's going to have enough knocked off that price because it is a pricey book. It's well worth it. But hopefully that coupon code will help to offset some of the shipping charges. So keep an eye on that. We'll be posting that information up too. Anything else you got for me, guys?
So we've got Maple Leaf Riders just been all over the place. So they were suggesting or maybe asking about salmon scenting and braining. So with your littles that are first hatch out, do you ever have to pinky pump or brain them? Or what are your strategies for your itty bitties that won't eat? Does that spray work for everything?
Well, the product that I sell is a dried product, so
Mm-hmm.
it's actually a fabric that has the smell on it. So you reconstitute it kind of like you would a tea bag, and then
Uh-huh.
just use that to dip the face of the pinky in, and then feed. And that's something that I've done for the last 10 years because about 10 years ago we had a morph that came on the scene called the spider morph,
Mm-hmm.
and we had trouble with the babies getting them started. We just didn't have any feeders, and it was a drought in that year, 2007 to 2009 in Texas. There just was not a lot of rainfall, so we didn't
Mm-hmm.
have opportunity to get some of the things that entice these babies to get going. So, long story short, I just after that point, I started acquiring lizards and toads and using those to scent to trick those babies to get going. And
Mm-hmm.
so usually I could get an animal, and even still today with those scenting techniques, I can get those animals switched over to unscented in 3 to 10 meals. So
Hmm.
some up transition very quickly. But the most important thing, and the reason that you have to pinky pump or brain or anything else, is you need to get protein into that animal, because if they go for a length of time without any absorbed yolk in their bellies, they die.
Right.
Since time. So I don't pinky pump. I don't force feed. I just go with a variety of scents. So
Okay.
some of the repertoire that I've used before, when I didn't have the lizard scent or the toad scent or any other scent, is I would go with salmon. I would go with tuna fish. I've heard of people doing the braining before. With braining, you can kind of put you can kind of rock your thumb forward and squeeze like you would toothpaste, and a
Yeah.
little bit of the brain matter comes out the nose, and usually that's all it takes to get those animals going. The brain, it has a smell like a frog. You know, it has that fishy smell, and I think that's just something instinctively that the snakes know that they're used to. You know, for the things they would consume, you know, an amphibian prey or something like that
Right.
in the wild. So I've just always stuck to more natural foods rather than unnatural. But
Mm-hmm.
saying all that to say, I think that salmon is fine. I would just suggest freezing it. Your snake could still pick up parasites, you know, from fish. You know,
Yeah.
somebody can eat sushi and get really, really sick.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to do that to your snake either. Just freeze it and then reuse it. But tuna has been something that's pretty consistent. You can get it anywhere,
Yeah.
and it works pretty good. Canned chicken works for some. You know, there's other methods.
So, I do have to ask you, this is
Sure.
embarrassing. So, you got a phone call a few weeks ago because I was at home working and my husband was in Texas, and I
Uh-huh.
got kind of a nasty envenomation from a juvenile hognose. Um, I've been bitten plenty of times before. I always free handle our hogs. Sometimes they latch onto me. No big deal. You know, their rear fang, their venom is not very potent. And
Sure.
once my finger swelled a little, and well, this time, I don't know what happened. I assume I'm developing a bit of an allergy to their venom, but my hand blew up like a balloon, and
Uh-huh.
it wasn't very cute. So, yeah, I guess you got a call, and then people started calling me, and kind of embarrassing. But yeah, it was not a fun experience. So I didn't need to go to the hospital or anything. The only problem was that basically my hand swelled up so big that it did cause some pain, because you know your skin
Inflammation. Yeah.
stretched so far. But I wanted you to tell us what you know about hognose venom and the danger to humans or the lack thereof, or you know, basically some people don't condone hognose keeping because they're a venomous snake, which I keep other venomous snakes. But basically I just hadn't really, honestly, that snake bit me and latched on and just kept envenomating me, and I wasn't worried about it. It was probably at least 10 minutes, and that little bugger just kept chomping down, and I could tell, like, oh yeah, it's burning, I'm being envenomated, but I wasn't worried. So and again, still, it basically just swelled up. My hands kind of felt like pins and needles. It actually caused my other hand to swell up, and my pulse was kind of racing, but that could be I did use an EpiPen just in case I was going into anaphylaxis, which I didn't think I was, but I had one handy because I've had allergies before. So I thought, well, it wouldn't hurt. So actually the racing pulse could have actually just been from the EpiPen. But tell us what you know or think about hognose venom.
So, yeah, you brought up a great point, especially for new owners, because you won't get a hognose snake ever that bites out of aggression. They're just not an aggressive species. Yeah. But I've been envenomated by a hognose, and I use the word in envenomation, and I don't want to ever equate the venom a hognose will have with any other species that are typically considered, some of the more toxic venomous species. I'll tell you real quick on my bite. The female that I had, ironically, she was from your neighborhood. So she was a stubby-tailed, probably 30-inch big female. And she wasn't doing real well on unscented mice. So I had a toad, and I was offering her a toad that somebody had found that was run over on a highway out in New Mexico. And it was still in good enough condition. And I rinsed it off real well and was offering that to her. And hognose are kind of derpy. So meaning they are kind of like the ball pythons. They don't know how to strike at a target. They'd be horrible at archery if they ever had to shoot a target. So instead of biting the toad that I'm offering an inch from her face, she swings around and grabs this part of my finger here. So she grabbed right here and sucked my entire finger all the way down. And that fang, on a large female like that, it was probably between an 1/8 and a 1/4 inch long. And those fangs are different from other types of fangs. They're not a hollow fang. They're not even a grooved fang. They're just a tooth, and that's where they get their name. Hetero means different, and don means tooth, just like dentist or orthodontist.
Right.
Don means a different tooth. So it's a different tooth in the back of the mouth. Now, we believe in evolution, and if you're familiar with evolutionary changes, they've evolved to where they don't have to have a venom sac like a viper would have. And what they've got is a Duvernay's gland, and it's similar, and it has a saliva, and the primary purpose of that saliva is so when they bite a prey item, it immobilizes it, right? It slows metabolism, it slows heart rate. And for you, it's not going to be any big deal because you possess so much more mass than other animals. But
what are you saying?
No. Human.
Mankind in general.
Yes. Yeah. So just size-wise comparisons, little toads, they're going to be devoured rather quickly, And then an additional thing, you've always seen the videos where they're biting down, chomping down, because what's the toad's number one defense? It sucks up with air. That means it's too big to be swallowed, so they're hoping the snake will spat it out. But even garter snakes, chomp, 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 hoping that movement and that biting motion will help to pop that animal so it can be swallowed. And I've seen hognose poke, and it sounded like popping a balloon, and your heart just goes, oh man, because you feel for the toad. But we've seen them in the wild consume toads, and it's just phenomenal to watch. But anyway, back to my story. When the snake bit, her fang got me on the radial. Let's see if my medical terms are correct. That's the little radial. Is it the radial artery? Anyway, it was the vein on my left-hand index finger. So immediately I had a pain in my armpit. I had a throbbing right at the bite site, and it would not stop bleeding for anything. And I washed and washed and washed, rinsed and rinsed and rinsed. Didn't get a lot of localized swelling. I got a little bit that I could tell when I held my finger out, but I got nauseous and just felt like I wanted to vomit. and that lasted for about 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So queasy and, just didn't feel quite right. So I drank a lot of water and took Benadryl, and that really knocked it out.
Yeah.
But again, she only held on to me for maybe 20 seconds. So it wasn't, but she's huge, so when she's biting and she's thinking, and if snakes are anything like humans, you can smell food and your stomach and your esophagus will release amylase, which breaks down the carbohydrates, and it releases protease, which breaks down protein. Your food hasn't even gotten in your body, and your body's already releasing enzymes to break it down. So the hognose snake may be developed similarly, I don't know, to where when they smell something, things are already activated, because it's a feeding response. So that was my bad bite, and I just watch it. But a hognose, if they ever bite onto you, they've got that rostrum that's really hard, and you can kind of just use that and peel backwards and lift up, or you can take a business card or a credit card and slide it between your skin and the upper teeth. And the lower teeth are smaller, so they come off relatively easy. But yeah, that was how that particular bite was dealt with. But yeah, you got to see and experience firsthand what that bite feels like. And, it's an educational deal. I don't think that it's beneficial for us as keepers to say, hey, they're a venomous snake, because of the association. You and I know,
I agree.
And most people know and go, okay, it's not the same thing. But a lot of folks, they don't know how to make distinguishments. You know what I mean? So that's been my only encouragement for everybody, is just that, yeah, it's a venom. Yeah, it affects you. It's more like an allergy. I got bit by a garter snake one time, and that site would not stop itching like for a whole day, and it swelled up and turned red. But garter snakes also have that same Dvorny gland in the back of their mouth, and it's just a modified, the whole snake venom thing. You guys know this with HOTS, but venom is there to help aid in digestion. It immobilizes an animal, and it aids in digestion. So hognose snakes just have I don't know if it's moving towards a venomous species or moving away from venomous species as far as evolutionarily speaking. But yeah, it is something that has to be contended with. And I think you bring up a great point that, anybody that's considering one for a pet, this is something you're going to have to look at. This is something you're going to have to watch out for, because you definitely don't want a kid, a small child having a worse allergic reaction, based on something like that. And you guys too, if you see, there's a photo floating around the internet where a picture was put on there that was not a hognose bite, and it looked awful. So you got to kind of be careful, snope something to see, because,
I've seen so many pictures of somebody with a hole in their back this big, and they said, oh, this was from and I'm like, that is not even related. Everybody thinks their sickness is a spider bite. Oh, well, I had flu-like symptoms. Yeah. Maybe you had the flu. I mean, people vilify animals. So yeah, this definitely. If you see a bite wound, or you read some little news story about, proceed with caution.
Yes. And I'm actually
because
glad.
First of all, usually it's wrong.
Yeah, and I think it was good that you were kind of able to document your situation, because you guys have it on a video, correct? So I think that
yes.
I think that's a good resource for people to have, and see, you're not freaking out, you're not racing off to the ER. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I didn't. And then I even had pictures of my hand for a few days. And like I said, the biggest discomfort was that my hand did swell up. I mean, pretty big. And, it was just that the skin was pulling. And it was like the burning pinprick, that wasn't what was driving me crazy. It was, well, first of all, I was worried. So of course, it was this hand. So I took my wedding rings off right away,
Yeah.
but then I didn't expect my I had rings on all these fingers. I didn't expect my other hand to swell at all. And so then when I started feeling them get a little tight, I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But it's because that animal was latched onto me for a long time, gnawing and gnawing. And in my mind, anytime a non-venomous snake has ever bitten me, I've always I just wait for them to release. I'm not worried about it. Oh, well, actually, I did have a big burm bite someone one time. And, we did everything we could to get her off because, it was pretty painful.
Yeah.
But, if our I've had a king snake try to swallow my whole finger, and I just waited until I gave up because who cares? So yeah, I just kind of waited for her to release, and I wasn't worried about it. And I just wrapped my hand at work for a few days. I couldn't bend my fingers at all for about a day or two. And then the swelling went down. And the only reason I had it wrapped was just because it looked really gross and people kept asking me about it. And so basically it's just like when it was wrapped, I was like, oh, I hurt my hand, and we had an ice storm. So most people thought I fell. I slipped in the ice. I was like, yeah, because I feel like people are already so afraid of snakes. I got bitten by retics today. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
It's, and so I don't tell people every day when I go to work, oh, I got another snake bite. Oh, it's so scary, because it's not. I mean, she didn't want me to help her shed out. I wanted to help her shed out. So she bit me a few times. No biggie. But, so I was kind of keeping my bite quiet, but yeah, we might do a video about it because it's just a fact of nature. But first of all, any person who chooses to interact with a snake, if they're ever bitten, it's always their fault. It's never the snake's fault. And secondly, I really was in no danger. And people are like, oh yeah, but you could be allergic. Yeah, you can also develop an allergy to latex or cotton or milk.
Yep, that's right.
I mean, so hide away from the world if you want. Don't ever get into a vehicle again, because that's way more dangerous than, any reptile that I know. But yeah, so somebody's saying their African gray bites them all the time. That's a bite.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, well, so it's been almost an hour and a half. Well, it's been exactly an hour and a half. So I don't think people have any more specific questions for you. This has been absolutely amazing, and I would love to have you on again after your next book comes out, or just anytime.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'll coordinate something and get all the viewers together and just have a little party.
Sounds good, and we need to just meet up soon.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Thank you, all of you guys who were watching. For all of you that are watching now and all of you that are watching after the fact, we're going to link all of Kevin's books, his website, and I don't know if you interact through social media or if you mainly stay on forums, but basically any way you can reach this guy, we're going to link it in the description box. So people are saying good night and thank you. And so have a happy Saturday night, everybody. I love you all. I'm sorry it's been a bit without a video. If I hadn't said this, more than half my crew has moved to Texas, so it's been a little bit tough. But we are still filming and we'll be publishing as much as we can. Hopefully we won't take another 2-week break ever again. But we are doing the best we can. So I love you guys. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you all soon.
See you guys.
Bye.